So as we continue to learn how to study the Bible, probably the best question is, what is the best way to study the Bible? And my simple, quick answer to that is consistency. It's just like any other discipline in your life. You've got to do it consistently over time. It's just like today, if I were to go and I were to eat a salad instead of a hamburger and French fries, that would be a really good decision, but I may not see any difference on the scale. But if I were to do that day after day after day for 6 months, I would see big results. In fact, I should probably go get on that today. But that's the way it works with Scripture. If you do it consistently over time, you will see big results. When you're reading Scripture, I say it, do it. Just do it. Decide to do it consistently over time. And then you will understand in 6 months so much more than you understand right now. Now, having said that, I do not recommend that you jump in and you start reading Genesis and just read all the way through to the end of the book of Revelation. Don't read it that way. And let me tell you why. Because the Bible is not actually one book. It is a collection of 66 different books and letters. What that means is it is a library. Now, you wouldn't go to the library and start in the A section and move to the Z section, right? No, you would go in and find one book at a time. So do it consistently, but don't necessarily go Genesis, Revelation. Here's what I would do. And this is really the best method. I would start with a book. I would pick the book of Matthew. I would pick the book of Romans. I would pick a New Testament book. I would start in the beginning and I would read chapter 1, maybe 2, and then the next day, 3, 4, 5, 6. I would just move through a book like that until you get to the end, and then you pick another book and read through it like that. That way, you'll read it really the way it was intended to be read, and you'll get the most out of it. This is way better than playing Bible roulette, where you just sort of thumb through and then start reading. You might, by happenstance, by luck, you might find something good that way, but that is not the best way to read Scripture. So, consistently, one book at a time. Don't necessarily go through the Bible from start to finish. And then the next thing I would say, the best way to understand Scripture is as you're reading it, when you come into things that you don't necessarily understand, this is your moment. When you come across something you've never read before or you don't understand, I believe this is your opportunity to dig down deep and discover God. Don't just move by it and go, well, I don't get that, and move on to the next thing. Stop and try the best you can to understand what is happening there that maybe you've never heard before. I'll just tell you, some of the richest times in my Bible study and really in my relationship with God is when I came across a verse that I'd never heard before. And then as I get that verse in my head and I begin to contemplate it, I begin to really research. Now, before you run off to Google and before you phone a friend, what I recommend is that you find other places in Scripture that talk about this same subject. So maybe you come across something like sexuality, and you're like, you know what? I want to understand this verse on sexuality. And so you want to go find other verses that talk about that same subject. Here's what I do. I go to Bible Hub. I love BibleHub.com. Really simple tool. I look up the verse that I'm reading that maybe I don't understand or that's new to me. And then I go and find cross-references on the right-hand column or down below. It has cross-references, and it'll give you other scriptures that talk about the same subject matter. The best way to interpret the Bible is with the Bible. So you find these things that maybe you don't understand, you dig down deep into them, and in those moments you allow God to speak. And then finally, here's what I think is important. You contemplate or you meditate. You just take some time. Maybe you set the Bible aside and you begin to pray about this, and you allow God to speak. I got to tell you, there's been many times where I'm reading Scripture where I just had to lay it down and go, man, God, what does this mean for me? Or how should I change the way I think because of what I've read in Scripture? I'll give you one example. I'd always heard people talk about trials, and we didn't really know why anything bad ever happens in our life. And so I kind of bought into that. I believed that. But then one day I was reading all on my own, James chapter 1, verse 2, and I had never heard anybody ever teach about this. And it says really simply, James 1, 2, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds, because you know the testing of your faith develops perseverance. And perseverance must finish its work so that you will be mature and complete, not lacking anything. I read that and I stepped back and I went, I think that may be the deepest thing I've ever heard. It's just this thought that we cannot mature unless we have a trial that we have to persevere through. Our faith literally cannot grow unless we have trials that we persevere through. So there's those little moments where you just pause, you contemplate, you dig down deep, and you allow God to speak. So consistency, study one book at a time from start to finish, explore the stuff you don't understand, and meditate on what you find. You do this time and time again, I think you'll see God show up in your life and teach you things that you didn't know.